President Donald Trump is suggesting cancelling the licences of TV networks that criticise him. He made the comments after the ABC network indefinitely suspended the Jimmy Kimmel Live talk show. The host said Trump supporters wanted to exploit the killing of right-wing political activist Charlie Kirk for political gain.
Back aboard Air Force One after his state visit to Britain, Donald Trump turned his attention to domestic matters, defending the media regulators' pressuring of the ABC network to drop Jimmy Kimmel Live. For the president, it's all a question of balance.
I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I get 97% negative. And if they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away.
Who would the president like to see replace Kimmel?
Anybody could replace him. The guy had no talent. Kimmel had, look, he was fired. He had no talent, but he had no ratings. His ratings were worse than Colbert.
The president was referring to the award-winning Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which goes off-air in April after being cancelled by broadcaster CBS, who said the traditional format was no longer economically viable. But Colbert's cancellation came just days after he criticised CBS's parent company Paramount Global for paying Trump $16 million to settle a lawsuit the president had brought over an interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris. Kimmel's suspension was different. He was removed explicitly for what he said, and that is what has alarmed many on the American left. People like comedian Jon Stewart, who returned to his old stomping ground, The Daily Show, to give his take on the furore.
My name is Jon Stewart, and welcome to The Daily Show. We have another fun, hilarious, administration-compliant show. Are the naysayers and the critics right? Is Donald Trump stifling free speech?
Of course not, John. Americans are free to express any opinion we want. To suggest otherwise is laughable. Ha, ha, ha.
But there are plenty who are not laughing. Journalist Chris Wallace, seen here receiving his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, anchored shows on networks across the political spectrum, from CNN to Fox News.
I think any time that people get in trouble for just stating a point of view, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether you agree with it or not, that's worrisome.
Another doyen of American television put it typically bluntly.
Well, it's a comedian talking. If they don't like it, don't watch it.
But that doesn't seem to be Donald Trump's philosophy. With Colbert and Kimmel gone, he's now calling for the NBC network to remove Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, another two hosts who have been among the president's most outspoken critics.
Clayton Wymers joins us now from Washington, D.C. He's USA Executive Director of Reporters Without Borders. Clayton, great to have you with us. Thank you for your time. We just heard in that report Trump saying that 97% of coverage about him is negative. How did he come up with that statistic? Is there any evidence suggesting that that is true?
Oh, your guess is as good as mine where that number comes from. It's something he's repeated before. I don't think it has any bearing in reality, though. And let me be clear, it doesn't matter. You know, the media is free to criticize politicians all they want. That's the crux of the First Amendment. That's the crux of living in a free society, is that the media is allowed to criticize. And, you know, you played a clip of Donald Trump speaking on Air Force One a moment ago. A little bit later, when he was giving those comments, he explicitly said they're not allowed to do that, talking about networks criticizing him. He's just completely wrong.
Well, and he's the president of the United States, and he's calling for licenses potentially to be revoked. I mean, how serious is this current situation for US press freedom, for freedom of speech in general?
It couldn't be more serious. We've never had a moment in our history where the government is explicitly telling the news media what it can and can't say in order to stay in business. And, Donald Trump is confusing matters a little because the government doesn't give the networks licenses. The networks don't operate under licenses. The local affiliate stations do operate under licenses. And so Brendan Carr, his FCC chairman, has been threatening to the affiliate stations is that locally they'll have their licenses revoked. The FCC does have jurisdiction over these licenses, but the jurisdiction does not go so far as to police content. That's been upheld in court decisions year over year, going back a century.
Critics are, of course, calling this censorship. Others say it is about showing respect for victims. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's not the government's job to decide what is respectful speech or not. The First Amendment protects all speech. As long as you are not inciting violence, you have every right to say it.
Now, affiliates are arguing that late-night comedy still has to meet community standards. From what you were just saying, I mean, is there any argument that, for satire can be exempt?
Well, the ability of comedians to satirize politicians is the mark of a free society. This is what we see in authoritarian regimes: is they go after the people who mock the leaders. If they can get away with that, the next step is to jail the journalists. And this is not an empty threat. Donald Trump has talked repeatedly about wanting the Department of Justice to investigate news media outlets. He has threatened to jail journalists for protecting their secret sources. And so, we have to take it very seriously. We have to take them at their word that this is what they want to do.
You were saying the US regulator for TV, the Federal Communications Commission, is warning of potentially revoking TV licenses. There's talk about that. What standards are used when licenses are issued? And can the FCC be legally challenged if they do then decide to revoke a license?
I'm not a lawyer or an expert on FCC licensing, so I wouldn't want to speak out of turn. But in general, the FCC has jurisdiction to ensure, the fair use and sharing of public broadcast airwaves. And they have some jurisdiction over ensuring that broadcasters don't air obscenities. But there's a very clear line between that and policing the content of speech. And nothing Jimmy Kimmel said was obscene. I personally don't think it crossed any line. It wasn't a joke at the expense of Charlie Kirk, whose murder is a tragedy. It was a joke at the expense of Republicans trying to score political points off of the tragedy. If that's out of bounds, then satire is dead in this country.
Clayton Weimers with Reporters Without Borders. Thank you so much, Clayton.